Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us for the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber's annual meeting. Through the years, the Silver Cup ceremony has been a shining symbol of honor, reflecting the accomplishments of those city builders whose names appear on these championship trophies. These cups are a symbol of leadership, responsibility, and service to our city and state. The names of all past chamber chairmen beginning in 1889 are engraved on these two cups, so that these past leaders will have a permanent memento of their service. Replicas of this cup are given to the chairman, which are displayed on the head table. Our Silver Cup ceremony begins with the past chairman of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber who join us today. Edward H. Cook, who served in 1974 and 1975. Dan Hogan, who served in 1981 and 1982. Lee Allen Smith, who served in 1985, 1986, and 1987. Edmund O. Martin, who served in 1989. William E. DURRETT, who served in 1990. Frank A. McPherson, who served in 1992. Stanley HUPFELD, who served in 1994. Clayton I. Bennett, who served in 1996 and who serves as Vice Chair of Strategic Planning in 2015 and 2016. Gerald L. Gamble, who served in 1997. David R. Lopez, who served in 1998. V. Burns HARGIS, who served in 2003 and 2004. Fred J. Hall, who served in 2005 and 2006. J. Larry Nichols, who served in 2007 and 2008 and serves as Vice Chair of Strategic Planning in 2015 and 2016. David THOMPSON, who served in 2009 and 2010. Carl Edwards, who served in 2011 and 2012 and serves as Vice Chair of Bioscience in 2015 and 2016. And Peter B. DELANEY, who served in 2013 and 2014 and currently serves as immediate past chair. These are the past chairs of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. Providing today's invocation from Crossings Community Church is Senior Pastor Marty Grubbs.
Let's pray. Father, this time of the year we are especially thankful that you have been kind to us and you find us worthy of your love and of your Son, and we thank you for this. We also are thankful today to be in a place where we can celebrate our city, our leadership, and all that you have done and yet are to do in front of us. Thank you, Father, for the leadership represented on this stage, in this room, and throughout this city. Leadership that carefully, humbly, and wisely guides us through tough times as well as successful times. We thank you, Father, for the privilege we have to be citizens of America, to live in the great state of Oklahoma, and especially to call Oklahoma City our home. Today, Father, we thank you for all your blessings, for the meal that we share, for the friendships that we cherish, and we thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Please stand for our national anthem, performed by the Couture Quartet of the OK City Chorus.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome the 2015 and 2016 Chairman of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, David Rainbolt.
Thank you, and thank you especially for being here this morning. Before we reflect on this past year, I think we have a few more introductions to make. I'd like you all to recognize our executive committee at the Chamber. If you would, hold your applause until we finish up. You've just met 4 members of the executive committee: Clay Bennett, Pete DELANEY, Carl Edwards, and Larry Nichols. But you have not yet met John Hart, our treasurer from Continental Resources, Judy Hatfield, Equity Commercial Realty, Vice Chair of Membership, Rhonda Hooper, Jordan Advertising. She's the Vice Chair of Economic Development and the 2016 Chair-elect. David Jackson of JP Morgan Chase, Vice Chair of Military and Aerospace. PERCY KIRK, Cox Communications, Vice Chair of Marketing and Communications. Brad Krieger, Arvest Bank, Vice Chair of Government Relations. And Tom McDaniel, American Fidelity Foundation, Vice Chair of Maps Development. Next to him is Teresa Rose CROOK, Oklahoma City Community Foundation, Vice Chair of Education and Workforce Development. And Natalie Shirley, President of OSU OKC, Vice Chair of Convention and Visitor Development. And then the best dang chamber exec in the country, Roy Williams, CEO. Bruce Lawrence and John Rochelles couldn't be with us today, but we thank them as well. Our chamber, as we've talked about many, many times, has an outstanding partnership with government, both at the municipal and state level. We've got many elected officials in the room with us today, so I would like us to recognize all of them. So would all elected officials please stand and let's show our appreciation. Thank you for being here. You know, a year ago, I stood here and mused a bit about my typical bad luck when it comes to timing as I took over the chamber chair as oil prices plummeted from triple digits to the mid-60s. Little did I know those would be the good old days. It is a stark reminder for all of us that continuing our effort of diversification is no less than vital. To continue to grow our critical mass in non-energy sectors is something we've got to be about every single day. Along those lines, it's important to note, in many ways, in 2015, we are doing some of our very best work to create a more diverse base. Our visitor economy continues to grow, with domestic travel receipts in Oklahoma County, reaching $2.8 billion. That represents just under 33,000 jobs and $250 million in state and local taxes. Our aerospace sector, as we all know, is white hot. Just 2 examples. Tinker is in the midst of trying to hire 1,000 employees in 100 days, and Boeing is in the midst of beginning to add 800 to 1,000 employees by mid-2016. Think about that, 2,000 jobs, and blending all those together, the average salary, I'm going to guess, is $75,000, $80,000. 2,000 jobs with that kind of average salary. We haven't had a single economic development announcement of that magnitude in this decade. So that's homegrown, and that is immense, as you might imagine. Yes, deservedly so. student achievement showing signs beginning to improve, with students scoring double-digit gains in standardized math tests. This year, the Chamber worked with companies to announce more than 5,800 jobs. That average salary of those jobs was $48,000 and exceeded our goal. Capital investment attendant with that was $2.8 billion. As you know, the work of this organization is very broad, and our accomplishments in this year that might otherwise have only been remembered as a tough energy environment are impressive. And I'd like to highlight 3 projects that we're in various stages of that I think will add much value in 2016 and the years ahead. It goes without saying, we're already beginning to see the results of the BNSF acquisition that we've talked about before. Construction is set to begin. Hiring, as I mentioned, is already starting. But there is some new news. The base is now under strong consideration for the maintenance of the new long-range strategic bomber. This isn't the KC-46 we've talked about before. This is a new aircraft, and we're under consideration for that. We've had massive employment growth historically at Tinker, but this could just be the tip of the iceberg. The innovative work done every day at the base has now become a model of efficiency of scale, well noted by the Department of Defense, and it's attracting much interest for both public and private workloads. Our community partnership with the base, as hopefully we mention every time we gather, is giving us a differential advantage that has created an absolute aeronautical juggernaut that the world is taking note of. We have long known that the Oklahoma Health Center is an important employment niche in our community, in addition to the life-changing research and healthcare that takes place there. We've seen the addition of the GE Global Research Facility and the growth of emerging technology companies and had huge success there. But in addition to that, we have all the elements in place have become the ideal candidate for the Brookings Institution to have chosen us to create a unique lifestyle that surrounds all this commerce that has long taken place at the health center, to create an ever more attractive lifestyle to be even more effective in attracting and retaining the young talent that goes to the health center for employment. In October, the Brookings Institution announced that 2 cities in America, Oklahoma and Philadelphia, have been chosen where they'll focus their efforts on place building over the next 2 years. We will do this work in collaboration with the Alliance for Economic Development, the Oklahoma Health Center Foundation, Presbyterian Health Foundation, City of Oklahoma City, University of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. The third example I want to highlight is different than most economic development undertakings of the Chamber, but no less important, maybe even more important. And that is the recent announcement of the creation of the Oklahoma City Criminal Justice Task Force. We've all read about and heard about, and some of us even observed the shortcomings of our county jails facility. They're well documented. We know we do not meet the Department of Justice standards that have been laid before us. We've worked through many of their criticisms, but some of them are impossible to address until we have some infrastructure changes. Having said that, simply building another jail does not begin to address the overcrowding and the economic inefficiency of housing the type of inmates we house, and the effects of that on operating a jail. I don't think there's a person in this room that wants Oklahoma City to be the last city in America to build a 20th century jail. We've got to move decisively and come up with a forward-looking and comprehensive solution that begins to address the 21st century societal issues of incarceration, focusing where possible on rehabilitation and treatment, and at the same time, and importantly, saving taxpayer dollars in the process. A perfect solution is not going to be easy to arrive at. There's layer upon layer of problem here. But we will come up with an exceptional plan. We've got an exceptional committee put together that Clay's leading for us, and we will be hearing more and more about that as 2016 unfolds. All three of these efforts obviously have long-lasting impact on our entire region. They each require investment of time, money, political capital. They're complex and exacting, and in the face of economic uncertainty of commodity prices, they could have been pushed aside for another day. We all know that's not what Oklahoma City does. In fact, I would argue that many of our city's greatest accomplishments have been achieved during times such as we are in right this minute. Later today, I'll be joined by three iconic leaders of our city, state, and corporate communities whose careers have been defined under tough circumstances. We'll hear their observations for how they think we can lay further groundwork as we go forward into 2016. I call on each of you, each of us in this room, to affirm your commitment to the work we do here at the Chamber. We're at the close of Forward Oklahoma City 4 and begin next month the funding cycle for Forward Oklahoma City 5. If you're not already an investor in that undertaking, I encourage you to consider it. The projects I've described are hardly exhaustive of all that is done at the Chamber. As always, we will continue the blocking and tackling, if you will, protecting the business climate at the Capitol, involvement and leadership to support the transformation, which is absolutely fundamental to everything we do of the Oklahoma City Public Schools. It's paramount. And our work on job recruitment, workforce development, and quality of life, we do that every day. Not to wax Dickensian here, but we are seeing elements of both the best of times and the worst of times. It is a time of challenge, certainly, but it is no less a time of metamorphic opportunity. We are a tough stock. We know that alarm is not productive. Nonetheless, I think we'd all agree that $38 oil is at least a call to action. And I can think of no better group to pursue the opportunities that are in front of us than this organization, the group of people in this room. I look forward to working with you in 2016. Thank you for being here.
And now we invite you to enjoy lunch, where we will recognize on screen the sponsors of today's event. Special thanks to signature sponsor, Bank of Oklahoma, video sponsor, Video 405, and speaker sponsor, Verizon Wireless. We will also recognize members of the Chamber's Board of Directors, as well as all past chairmen from the past 126 years. Please enjoy your lunch. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screens as we return to the program.
Come back for you? Want to keep it free? No, good. All right. I'll expose it.
For more than 100 years, the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber has been an advocate of growth for Central Oklahoma. From the first railroad lines before statehood, to establishing Tinker Air Force Base, to the successes of the MAPS projects, the Chamber has worked tirelessly to brighten our city's future.
I think if there are positive things to be said about Oklahoma City, then the Chamber should share in the credit. Because you cannot look at this city's history and not acknowledge that the business community has been there every step of the way.
Without the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, you do not have a stockyards. You do not have a Tinker Air Force Base.
Community initiatives, there's obviously MAPS. There's MAPS for kids. There's Big League City. There's MAPS 3, but then there's also city bond issues, county bond issues, school bond issues. There's the acquisition of the BNSF land for Tinker. There's the acquisition of the General Motors facility.
We need to take care of our people, and we need to build up and execute the mission. And I would say the Chamber's involved with both helping us take care of the airmen, whether they're at home or whether they're deployed and their families are here.
You know, we need an advocate. We need someone to help bring new things and help even current things grow, and I think that's part of what the Chamber does.
I would say the legacy of the Chamber is ongoing. You look at MAPS and what MAPS has done to Oklahoma City, not just in helping bring the thunder here and revamping downtown, but with our schools.
It is critically important for everyone in this community to understand how important it is to invest in education, and the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber has been there year after year, time and time again.
And, you know, one of the great things about Oklahoma City and about the Oklahoma City Chamber is that business leaders are involved, and I think that's a very powerful and dynamic feature of the city and of the Chamber.
The Chamber has not only worked with businesses and retail, but also in the quality of life. The districts that have been able to grow around the city, that's definitely evidence of the Chamber's work throughout our city.
Economic development turns into jobs. Jobs turn into standard of living. Standard of living attracts new people, creates diversity, gives us more choices, and just makes us a better place to live.
Please welcome once again the 2015-2016 Chairman of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, David Rainbolt.
We're going to be the lucky witnesses today of a conversation between three great leaders. I called them iconic earlier, and I think that's fair, maybe even an understatement. So joining me on the podium is former Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating, former Oklahoma City Mayor Ron Norick, and Devon founder, former CEO, Chairman Larry Nichols. Each represent a different but important segment of leadership. Ron Norick stepped to the fore in leading our city in the tough times of the 80s. As governor, Frank Keating was the economic development leader at a real tipping point. If you look back historically, it was very much a tipping point for our state. And Larry is an incredible example of both business and community leadership, and has guided Devon through countless economic cycles. Each has led under difficult circumstances, not only surviving, but emerging ever stronger. I believe that much of the success we enjoy today can be traced back to the foundations laid by these three men. Please join me in welcoming them. Find my cards. Okay, we're going to just go down the line here, and each of you give us your perspective. The first question is, what do you think your greatest legacy is? Governor.
Marrying Kathy. That was actually, I lucked into a conversation with the Chamber after I was elected. And what I did was ask the Chamber and the State Chamber to help us bring the economics departments of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University together to answer the question, why are we poor? We were ranked 45th in per capita personal income. I had at the time, I was only the third Republican governor, the first one since the 60s, and a heavily Democrat legislature that would probably think anything I said was some kind of Heritage Foundation silliness. Well, OU and OSU came back and said, you don't have right to work. We tax everything. The trial lawyers own this place. The transportation infrastructure sucks. The kids don't take hard enough courses in school, and we have too much divorce. So I sat down with the pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, both Democrats, and said, well, here it is. We all have to work together to get this done. So after 8 years, we moved from 45th to 37th in per capita income, with oil never going above $18 a barrel. the things that I'm most proud of, number one is putting right to work in the Constitution, which I think a lot of states are putting it in the statute books, but that is a mistake because the next year it can be repealed. Secondly, putting the dome on the Capitol building. I thought that part of Oklahoma City just was never terribly attractive. So to fix up the grounds and to clean up the well sites, make them attractive, do the mansion over, build the build the Oklahoma History Center, and putting the dome on the Capitol practically entirely paid for with private money, I think was something to bring pride to the state and certainly pride to Oklahoma City. So right to work in the Constitution, the Capitol dome. The third thing would be my partnership with Ron Norick, seeing us as a community through the tragedy of the Oklahoma City bombing. And we grew taller, stronger, more confident, and I think a lot of the good things that we see in the city today are the result of out of evil, good comes, and Oklahoma City and Oklahoma Cityans felt so much better about themselves after they handled that horrific event.
Thank you. Mayor?
As I look around this crowd today, it dawned on me that I came in office 28 years ago. And if you're probably not in your 50s, by age, in your 50s, you probably don't have a clue what happened in the 80s. It's just hard to believe, but and the nice thing about that, I think in the 80s, I couldn't find anybody that was under the 50s here. Everybody was leaving. What I see here today is a population that is younger than when I came in, and that's exactly what we wanted. I think if you ask what my legacy could be, I mean, most people are going to say, well, he was the father of maps, and I'm proud of that. The Chamber's proud of that. This city's proud of that. But I think probably as much as anything, I could say I was a consensus builder. When I came into office in '87, never held public office. Came out of the business community, and I was fortunate enough to have time in my business community to be able to devote the time. And I was on the short end of a 6-3 vote for probably the first 2 years when I was in office. And you that understand what I'm talking about, you don't get much done when you're on the short end of a 6-3 vote. But over time, I built my relationships with my council people and with the citizens of this community to where I felt like most of the votes that I held were 9-0 votes on my side. And I think it was a consensus building. I never felt like I wanted to ever back anybody into a corner. I've lectured at classes at Oklahoma City University with young students coming in, and I've always told them, don't ever back somebody into a corner because then there's no way to get out of it. Work consensus, figure out how to do it, and I think that's very important. And one thing I've noticed about this community that I think that I'm probably the most proud of, even more proud of than all the bricks and mortar that we have here now and all the great facilities we have and all the fun we're having, is the attitude of the people. When I first came in office, people were down. They were not proud to be from Oklahoma City. You could get on an airplane, and I had done it many times, and I'd be sitting there when I was first in office, and I'd be sitting next to some gentleman or lady, and they'd say, where are you from? And I'd say, I'm from Oklahoma City. That'd be the end of the conversation. They didn't have a clue. It might be, now let's see, is that west of the Mississippi? I'd say, yeah, you know where Texas is? Yeah, well, we're right above Texas. That's where it is. But now, I think as you travel the world and you say you're from Oklahoma City, they know who we are. They know who Kevin Durant is. They know who the Thunder is. But you as citizens now, I think, have a much better perspective of yourself as individuals. And that's probably the biggest legacy that I can say that I'm proud of, is just changing the attitude of the people where we are proud to say we're from Oklahoma City and we're from Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, the partnership between business and City Hall has served us well for a long time.
Right.
Larry?
David, first you remind us of how much the price of oil has gone down during your tenure. And then you ask this legacy question. That means it's over. You know, I like to think my legacy is something yet I haven't done. that there's something out there in front of us to keep doing. Seriously, it has to be, of course, Devon, which I've devoted most of my life to, and the pride that I have in the integrity, the intolerance of mediocrity, the creativity of that company and all the people that we've hired, and to see that as it's grown from a small 4.5 employees when my dad and I started it to about 5,000 now. There's obviously a lot of pride in that, and to see a company that is continuing to play an active role in the economy. But also the Devon TIF, which is funding the tax on Devon's new building, which is funding almost all of Project 180, and having Devon make a $96 million loan to the city to help start it all at one time, and redo the Mary Gardens and redo so many of the streets and sidewalks in downtown, has made this place look a lot newer, more prosperous, and more fun. And I think that's played a role in the continuing momentum of this city.
Yeah, good point. I'm going to ask a question here that's sort of the antithesis maybe of your legacy, and Larry, I've got a little different spin on it for you. But Governor, is there something that when you look back you wish you had done differently?
Well, to Ron's very important point, and obviously Larry's leadership point, you got to bring everybody together, and that takes time. I was very impatient because I felt that too many kids were boogieing for Texas. Everybody was leaving. We need people to stay here. And I used to do something that I wish other governors around the country, including our own past and present governors, did. And that is, I would go visit CEOs of companies that were not headquartered here but had a major presence here. And I think that was a very important thing to do because everybody's out looking for a headquarters to bring. I was too. But we didn't have right to work. We taxed everything. So the word from business locators was, well, until you guys address those things, you're not going to do too well. I remember one time I went to Akron, Ohio, to meet the people of Goodyear and to thank them for being in Oklahoma. The chairman at the time and CEO of Goodyear was a guy named Sam Jabara, and just a terrific guy, very much focused on his business. And we all sat down for dinner, and he said, do you know where the most productive Goodyear plant is in the world? And I said, no, sir, I don't. And he said, Lawton, Oklahoma. We have them all over the world. The most productive plant is Lawton, Oklahoma. We had this great conversation about adding workers. He talked about the Fort Sill family, retired military people that were just totally focused on doing a good job, very, very productive. At the end of the meal, I had had perhaps one glass of wine too much, and I said to him, Sam, what will it take you to bring the headquarters, the world headquarters of Goodyear from Akron, Ohio to Oklahoma City? And he said, you're serious? I said, yes. And he said, well, I'll tell you, let's sleep on it, let's have breakfast. And I thought, well, this isn't a bad deal. So we had breakfast the next morning. He said, you know, I've given a lot of thought. I'll tell you this much. Do you know the last time the governor of Ohio thanked me for being in Ohio? And I said, I don't. He said, never. Ohio has never thanked Goodyear for being headquartered in Ohio. So you do several things, and I'll let you personally present to our board of directors moving the headquarters from Akron to Oklahoma City. Number one, pass right to work. We have to have that. And make sure it's in your Constitution. Number two, get rid of your personal and corporate income tax. I don't care what you substitute. Maybe a service sales tax, I don't care. Number three, make sure that you realize that every child that goes to school in your city may live someplace else, may go to school someplace else, and better be ready. So focus on make that presentation to me, you got it done. Well, we got charter and choice, public school choice. We required that kids take 3 years of math, 4 years of science, English, and history, put right to work in the Constitution, but we couldn't move on the corporate and individual income tax. Well, the lesson to me was something else he said. You know what it takes to move a corporation from one location to another, the headquarters? I said, no. He said, just unplug the computer and move. Look at Boeing. All of their operations are in Seattle. They're headquartered, amazingly, I don't understand why, in Chicago. So I think, to me, that was the best lesson I learned. You know, flexibility, partnership with the business community. Oklahoma City Chamber, Roy Williams, for example, when we presented to get the Thunder here to the ownership group, I mean, to have people who love and know the community, which we have in Oklahoma City, to partner and to get the political class to work as well to address those serious deficiencies on the tax side and, quite truthfully, the education side, that to me is the unfinished business, but it's certainly something, it's a lesson that I learned over and over again during the course of my 8 years of really fun service.
Well said. Mayor, what would you have done differently?
Well, I remember the night of the MAPS election. It was in December of 1993. And all the hoops of law, we had put a program together. The chamber had run the program on the election itself and the polling and everything. And we'd been doing polls all along, and in about October, the polls were showing that with any luck, we'd get about 30% of the vote. There was 9 original projects. There was only 2 of them that even came close to 50%. That was the downtown library and the river project. And it was pretty obvious it was going to be a tough vote. So but we got it done, and I remember coming into the watch party, and it was in the Bricktown Brewery, which was, I think, the only club open. I know a lot of people that are here today, they're probably in their 30s, probably thought Bricktown's been this the whole time. Trust me, that is not the Bricktown that we knew in the 80s, nor is Automobile Alley that's beautiful now and everything else. And the first word that I got from the TV, we had the TV monitors up when they're reporting the election, was that we were getting beat. And they had the opposition on camera talking about, we don't want taxes and so forth. And campaign advisor that we had, he said, we're going to win. And I mean, this is like at 7:15 in the evening. I said, what do you mean we're going to win? He said, we're going to win. We've checked our key precincts. We're going to win. And we did win. We had a landslide. 53% was our landslide. Thank goodness is all I can say. But anyway, we were so excited, and I was excited, and everything's going, and then all of a sudden realization the next morning. What have we done? We have just convinced the people to build 9 projects that we have no clue how we're going to do. We had an idea what it was, but we didn't really know yet. And so people want to know, well, when's this going to be built? When's that going to be built? And probably I was a little too energetic in letting people know, okay, this will open so-and-so. I mean, there was a lot of work, and I know Mick is here today, and I appreciate very much his leadership. He's probably going through a lot of the same things I was. It's pretty easy to put it on paper, but to get it from paper to in the ground and do all the things you've got to do, plus the beauty of MAPS is it's pay as you go. No money was ever borrowed. It was always money that we had, and I think that was important. But my enthusiasm would get me somewhat in trouble. That we're going to get this done. We were doing a lot of stuff. I left office in 1998, so the election was in December of '93. I left office in April, and I wasn't run out of office. I just voluntarily left office, just to make everything clear on that. In 98. The ballpark opened, the first MAPS project opened 2 days after I left office, and KIRK Humphreys and I threw out the first pitch. So to do something at the magnitude that this city did, and I say this city because it's the citizens, it's the people that are in here, it's our parents, our grandparents, everybody that was involved in that years ago, to be able to put that forward and do it. I mean, it is just unbelievable that what our community has done, not only just on that, but carried through on Maps for Kids and now Maps 3, all the bond issues we passed. When I came in office in '87, we hadn't passed a bond issue since 1976, and it was a very small one. Citizens were voting down every bond issue. The attitude of this community was not good. There weren't jobs for the young people, for college graduates or people that just wanted to work. There just weren't any. They were having to leave to go to Texas or Missouri or wherever they were going. They had to go, and that's changed. But probably, I wish I hadn't been quite so enthusiastic, but I think I also kind of had to be enthusiastic at the same time to keep it going. But once that ballpark opened, I don't know how many of you here remember that day. It was in April of 1998. The people of Oklahoma City, it clicked what we were doing. It clicked. You could just see it. And from then on, the attitude of the people was unbelievable. And every MAPS election since then has passed with majority. It's hard now for me to find the 47% that voted against it. Most people come up to me and say, great job, Mayor, you know, and all that. But I do have people come up and they'll say that to me. I never have hard feelings on any of that. I didn't have hard feelings when I was in the short end of a 6-3 vote. That's, you know, that's what it is. That's part of it. But it's hard to find, I think, today anybody that can tell you they voted against it in 1993.
Larry, I've got a little different question for you, but following Governor Keating's lead, let me be probably not the first, but thank you for headquartering here in Oklahoma City.
Amen.
We've probably read about an acquisition that Devon announced this week, right in the teeth of a tough commodity environment, and I think that's illustrative of how Devon and Larry Nichols deals with adversity. So, you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Well, I think you have to take a long-term view. Following up on the moving headquarters here, Devon's moved a lot of headquarters here. We just bought the companies and moved them here. It's a little more brutal than stating them, but
we like it.
But,
we like it.
I was once interviewed when we'd gone about 4 years in a row where we'd bought a major Houston company and obviously integrated into Devon up here, and I was being interviewed by the Houston newspaper, and they said, "Why do you keep coming to Houston to buy companies?" And I said, "Because for the same reason that Jesse James used to go into banks to rob money, get the money. That's where the money is. So we go to Houston because that's where the company is." Polly will kill me for having said that, but that's why we went to Houston to buy companies. No, I think the leadership you have to have is to recognize that these cycles, as Ron did, in starting coming out, I mean, the city was totally depressed, as he described, in the late 80s, early 90s, and to think about thinking long-term and proposing a tax and thinking the voters are going to approve that in a conservative Republican place like Oklahoma, he's crazy. And he did it to the great benefit of all of us. And it's been continued by mayors, including Mick Cornett. But I think just as Devon was building our tall building in the midst of the 2008, 2009 recession, at the time we came out of the ground, we were the only high-rise in the country coming out of the ground. And we did that just knowing that these cycles are cycles, and you got to plan long-term and not get yourself too bogged down in the problems of the day, because the good times will return. We're in a volatile commodity business, and it doesn't go up forever, and it doesn't go down forever. It sounds simple, but a lot of people lose track of that. So just having the long-term thought as we're participating in a new building and as we announced $2.5 billion worth of acquisitions under the great leadership of Dave Hager, our current CEO. When times are bad is an ideal time to do something. Now you get beat up a little bit. Wall Street beats us up every time we do that at the bottom of the cycle, but that's the right time to do it. And 6 months, 9 months later, oh yeah, I was with you all along, kind of like and I did vote for it, Ron, I promise. but you do have to take that long-term view and recognize that when you do something that's counter-cyclical, it's not going to be immediately popular.
but to have the strength of your conviction and to do it. Outstanding. You touched on it, Governor, just a little bit, but the next question is, what is the most critical challenge facing Oklahoma City today?
Well, Oklahoma City, and it's because of the leadership of you and these two men here, has really accomplished, as we all know, an extraordinary amount of good since the 80s. I know the first time I met Ron Norick was at that watch party. And I was, as a son of a Tulsa chamber head in Tulsa, I was astonished that Oklahoma City would do something like MAPS. It was amazing. But the thing that I learned, certainly when the presentation was made much, much later to the owners of the NBA to bring the Thunder here, and the chamber and the city had the best light show I've ever seen. I mean, if I were an owner, I'd say, yes, that place, because it was extraordinary, the light show that was presented, the persuasive appeal. Well, try being a governor and you have this disparate north, south, east, west. A lot of people in Oklahoma at the time had their daubers down. They were not particularly optimistic about their state, and they didn't think their kids were going to stick around. So when I gave my states to the state, I never used a written text except the first year. I would have notes, but I remember one thing I did, speaking of visuals, and I really want to mention this because I think it's funny, but it's also very persuasive. If you remember seeing the satellite photographs of North and South Korea, North Korea, it's black. South Korea, filled with lights. And the question is, where's the best place to live? People would say, in the light, not in the darkness. Well, one state of the state, Dan Mahoney's here, who's my communications director now with the Thunder organization, but I got a satellite of North Texas and a satellite of Southern Oklahoma, and put it up for everybody, all the legislature to see. Where was the light? The light was North Texas. The darkness was Southern Oklahoma, basically Oklahoma. And I said, same language, same land, same dust, same topography, same people. What's the difference? Government. They don't have an income tax. They have a very aggressive pro-business culture on permitting. For example, everybody would have to be licensed to get a job. You go out and get a job. And Oklahoma was much more sclerotic. So to the legislature seeing that, Democrats, Republicans alike, rural and urban, it was a bingo moment. Like, well, how come they've got the lights and we don't? And then we started the conversation about how to change things. When I went to see that watch parties, growing up in Tulsa, Tulsa was a little Athens. That's how it was described by Edward Durrell Stone, who did the Georgetown Library when Joe Lowinger, my friend, was killed in Vietnam. The family built the library on the Potomac. But in any event, with that as a background, seeing and hearing what Ron was proposing and what was going to happen to Oklahoma City, I thought, this is a cool place. And today, of my 3 children, one married a Virginia boy and she lives in Richmond, but of my kids, 2 of the 3 live here in Oklahoma City, and they wouldn't live anyplace else. And Kathy and I are coming back in January. So, you know, I just says that, I think that says a lot about the business as well as the political leadership locking arms with an enlightened citizenry to make this place an extraordinary place. And to me, it's just remarkable what has been accomplished. And I don't know how it could be done any differently or any better.
Mayor, what do you see as our contemporary challenge?
I think the challenge is to make sure that we are brutally honest with the public. And I know Mick has done a good job with this. The success of MAPS was that we did exactly what we said we were going to do. We did it all. If we had finished 8 projects out of 9, there would not have been a MAPS for Kids or a MAPS 3. It is vital that we say what we're going to do and we do it. Don't overpromise if we can't do it, but say, and the citizens of this community I've found very supportive. They understand we're good people. We understand. Just tell us what it is. We'll make the decision. And I think if people, I think that's the key to and I've told the leadership, my council people, and I've mentioned it to other council people as the years goes on, just do what you say you're going to do, whatever it is. And I'm so thankful. We have had wonderful leadership beyond me following in the mayor's office. KIRK Humphreys, Mick Cornett. That doesn't happen in most cities. Most cities, when you have a new mayor, they've got a whole new agenda. This agenda is keep going, and I don't know how much longer it's going to keep going. I think as long as we do what we say we're going to do, we come up with the programs that the citizens want. I don't think we ought to create things that we think they want. I think we ought to listen to what they have to say. But I think as long as we head that direction, we're going to keep being the kind of city that we all want to be, and we are. And I think that's just vitally important.
Well said. Larry, our biggest challenge.
We're going to all describe the same thing in slightly different ways. To me, what my greatest fear is that we lose the momentum that we have now. We've had it for a long period of time. It really came out of the depressed era in the late 80s. Anyone who was around this place in the 85 to 90, 91 period knows it was a pretty grim, rundown place. Last person out, turn off the lights, was a classic description. Look at the different components. Most of the businesses are actively involved in the city chamber. We have, I'm told, 1,200 people in this room. That's great. We're all leaders. Each and every person in this room is a leader in one sense or another. And that engagement, staying focused on the city, on the chamber, working with the chamber, and giving your 2 cents on what will make, and literally your 2 cents or whatever you can afford, but your advice on what can make this city a better place for your kids and my kids to grow up in, that's critical. Electing a string of mayors, Ron Norick, Mick Cornett, who understand business, who are dedicated to getting it done, who are team players. Electing a city council. All of these groups working together, having a city manager like we do. All of these components are working well together. And you can see that in what we've heard today, listening to David talk about the partnership that is developing between the chamber and various aspects of government to work on the jail. There are a lot of business people that could say, oh, that's not my problem, that's government's problem. I'm going to go take care of my business. Yeah, you can. But there are all these different components that are working well together. Sure, there are fights, sure, there are disagreements. There are some business people that are not involved. There's never 100% unanimity on city councils. But our mayors and our city councils and our business communities have had an incredible row, a long period of working together to have our compromises, but at the end unite and push the ball forward. And we've done an incredible job. If I remember, was reflecting back in the 70s, I was with my father in the Petroleum Club when I was in my 30s, and he was looking out across this giant slum. He was looking out toward the 1 or 2 hospitals in the hospital center, and said, one of the leaders of the day said, someday this area between downtown and there will all be filled in. I looked out through that slum, no interstate highway, and thought, these guys are crazy. There is no way that's going to happen. And now, there's still a few little holes, but it's a done deal. No one would question that. You can say the same thing if you look from downtown toward the river and say, Mr. Mayor, you have this grand park. It's never going to fill in down there to the river. I'll bet it does. I'll bet it does. And it will if we stay united, if we stay engaged, each and every one of us in our own way, then it will happen.
I don't think I could sum it up better than that. Let's give these great leaders a round of applause for being with us today.
You guys.
Well, we've heard the challenge. 2016 awaits us. Let's go get them. We're adjourned.
Well done.